Okay, it's 6 p.m. and we would like to welcome everyone to this evening's Legacy Parent Academy. My name is Christy Maker, Director of Counseling. We are so glad that you've joined us for tonight's presentation. This year, each of our Legacy Parent Academy events will be in webinar format and an hour in length. They will be on the Legacy Parent Academy online by the end of the week. A Spanish translation of the presentation information will also be posted online. This evening, we have 4 of our wonderful school counselors addressing anxiety and reintegrating into school. With our students having a large gap in in-person instruction, this information couldn't be more timely. We invite those in attendance this evening to add questions to the Q&A section. We will do our very best to answer those that we can address during our time this evening. Questions and answers will also be posted on the Legacy Parent Academy page, including those that we are unable to answer this evening and those that require more research. This evening, we are joined by Ann McHale Miller, Coordinator of Social Work Services, who will monitor the Q&A and also serve as our timekeeper. I would like to take a moment also to welcome and thank our presenters this evening, a few of our fantastic school counselors who represent both elementary and secondary campus levels. Ms. Alejandra Paez from Memorial Parkway Elementary, Ms. Norma Baisden of Wilson Elementary, Ms. Janie Bazargani of Seven Lakes High School, and Tracy Wagner of Pato High School. Ladies, welcome and thank you for sharing your insight and talent with us. Ms. Paez, please take it from here.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Legacy Parent Academy tonight. As Christy mentioned, we are talking about anxiety and reintegration into school. We are going to start by defining what is anxiety. As you can see on your screen, anxiety is a mental and physical reaction to dangerous or unfamiliar situation with extreme fear. It is that sense of stress that anticipates to an event or a significant occasion. We all have gone through something like that one point or another. Going back to school in the middle of a pandemic can be very stressful for students, as it is for teachers and all adults and parents and school personnel. In normal circumstances, going back to school can bring a little anxiety to our students, and at this time, instead of having that anxiety, instead of having that happiness, that excitement about coming back to school, we are having students feeling anxious about it. We don't know, or the students do not know, how are they going to greet their old friends? How am I going to meet how can I greet my old teacher? Do I give a high five to my friends, or do I just say hello? They don't know how to approach each other. It's kind of uncertain what to do, so they are feeling uneasy about that. So here are some of the most common fears or worries divided by age group. And as you can see on the screen, from 2 to 4 years old, you can see kids are afraid of the dark, of shadows or weather. Then between 5 and 7 years old, which is already kindergarten to probably 2nd, 3rd grade, they feel normal fears about dark and taking tests and peer rejection and some of these things that you see posted in here. Between 8 and 11, which is upper elementary school years, they start being afraid of being sick, failing at school, peer rejection, and these all play a very important role with the anxiety that the kids are feeling these days. Between 12 and 18 years old, which is junior high, high school years, they still being afraid of not being safe, failing in school. But look at this, fear for violence and global issues. We are going through a global pandemic, and these students are feeling that fear, which is normal for their age, but they are a little bit more than the normal take. Then between 18 and 20 years old, they have different fears still about germs and being sick, but about being homeless and death and adult type of issues. So it is normal for all kids of all ages to have fears that are appropriate to their age. The difference between a normal worry and an anxiety is the severity of that fear. Feeling anxious is a natural reaction to a stressful situation. What we need to do is to try to control the severity of these feelings so it doesn't get out of any proportion. In this slide, you can see some of the most common forms of anxiety these days. Of course, germs is number one because we are dealing with a pandemic that is spread through germs and is very easily spread. So that's one of the top fears right now. New classes, routines, and changing classes, changing teachers. New classes, of course, means something new, something exciting, new friends, new things to learn. But on the other hand, is that fear of, I'm going to a new classroom, is it clean? Can I sit on that chair? Who sat in here before? And that type of thing. The same thing happens with changing classes or teachers. It's the same type of fears every time they change classes or they need to change to a different teacher. Routines, the fear of routines right now is very important because we have been out of a routine for a long period of time, for 6, 7, even 8 months. And going back to a routine can be very, very difficult for some of our students. What a school day used to be before, nowadays can seem to be way longer. And the kids are tired and they say they cannot take it. This is too much. We need to try to get that routine going because that is going to provide to the students a steady mindset and positive thoughts, and it will give them some sort of confidence and they will feel that they are more in control. The fear for common areas nowadays is also a big one because cafeterias, hallways, recess for the little ones, gym, those are areas that are usually more crowded than the classrooms itself. So the kids are more anxious about being in a crowded or in a common area. You can help your students cope with all these forms of anxiety by talking to them about all the protocols and all the safety precautions that the district and the schools have been taken into consideration, and they are in place right now. We are working and we're trying to keep our kids safe. That's our #1 priority, okay? On the next slide, we can see some of the most common signs of anxiety. And you can see that your child might be a little bit more irritable than it was before, or they may lose appetite, or they might be having trouble sleeping. You need to be monitoring all these signs because this is what is going to tell you that something is going on. Your child is not going to come and tell you, hey, I'm feeling anxious about going back to school. No, you're going to see some differences, some changes in your child patterns, in their daily lives. So you need to be paying attention to those signs so you can try to catch these anxiety levels sooner rather than later. One thing that you can always do, and we always recommend to the parents, is to check the academic performance of your students. Always, always, always check their grades, check their academic performance, how they are doing, how they are feeling, how are their friends doing, and keep in close communication with the teachers so they can tell you what is going on, if there have been some changes or if something is bothering your child or something is happening in there. The academic performance usually tells you right away that something is happening. So pay close attention to that. So now I'm going to leave you with Norma, and she will explain to you the importance of keeping good communication with your child.
Thank you, ma'am, and welcome to everyone. So talking to your kids about anxiety might seem a little daunting, but it's really important to talk to them about it. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time right now kind of figuring out how to talk to them about it. And the very first and most important thing is for you just to start talking about it with them. Talk with them about what's happening and how the situation is making you feel as an adult. What are some changes that you've had to make or some things that you've worried about? Be honest with them to the extent that they can handle and that they're appropriate. You know, you're obviously going to tell different age kids different levels of fears, but be sure to let them know that they're not alone in this. Let them know how the situation is affecting you. But to balance that out, we want to be sure that you are also explaining some things that you've done to minimize the anxiety and how you're coping with the situation. And modeling those coping skills and habits is very important. Being sure that you are asking questions and letting your child talk about his feelings and fears is just probably in and of itself going to alleviate some of those fears and anxieties, and just be sure that you're validating them. Nobody likes to be made to feel like their fears are silly. So some of the ways that we can validate the fears is just, again, by listening. But we also want to balance that out by talking about things that the child can do. You want to make sure that you are talking to them about what's going to happen at school. If your child's in KVA, if they're in elementary and they haven't transitioned back yet, or maybe your child's in secondary and we're still not quite ready to transition back, they might be a little concerned or a little curious about what's happening at school. How do I know it's going to be safe? Talk to them about those safety practices and things that they can do at school. You know, washing hands frequently. There's hand sanitizer stations, very easy to get to. Things have been distanced as best that we can. Everybody's wearing our face coverings appropriately. And just checking on your child and just asking them like, hey, how's it going? You know, how do you feel like things are going? What was something good about today? What was something that worried you? Just let them know that their frustrations and concerns are understandable. This is really a little bit more for parents, the previous one. The validating the anxiety and practicing healthy habits is really good for parents. We're going to talk about the cognitive triangle in just a second.
Sorry, some technical difficulty here. Just a moment. Ms. Basin, are you able to see the screen?
I am. If we could go back to validate anxiety and practicing healthy habits. That's the one. There we go. Getting a little ahead of ourselves here. That's all right. We're just really excited to share this with you. So this is mainly for parents to kind of help kids reinforce. Sometimes, like Ms. Pius said, when the schedule has been disrupted for a while, it's really easy to let some of those routines and healthy habits and healthy practices that we had established, it's easy to kind of let those slip by the wayside. But as parents, it's kind of our jobs to step back and reevaluate and say, you know what have we let go of? What do we need to reevaluate? So practicing healthy habits encompasses not just, you know, like exercise and good diet, but all of those kinds of things. Maintaining physical activity is incredibly important, again, especially if your student is a KVA student. You will notice they are sitting for quite a lot of the day. So it's important that they get up and move around and have an outlet for and it keeps them healthy and fit. So they're also having an outlet to maybe just let their mind wander and drift and have some downtime. Eating healthy meals is really important. We all know that the importance of proper nutrition, but another component of that is if you have been spending a lot of time at home, you might find that instead of having a healthy sit-down dinner like you had done maybe 2 or 3 nights a week, that now there's a lot more snacking during the day. I know I'm guilty of, if I'm home and I'm working at home, I'm more prone to just, well, I'll grab a snack. And that's not really conducive to an overall healthy practice. Following a basic routine, again, kids thrive in routine, and they may fight you on it, and they may tell you that they don't like it. And if you've got junior high and high school kids, they think they're too big to have to listen to you about the routine. But a routine is very important. It provides a sense of structure, and they feel a sense of predictableness and a sense of control. Doesn't have to be super tight and regimented, but just so they know what's coming. And then making sure that they get enough sleep. It's really easy to have screen time all the way up till bedtime. And we're going to talk about, media exposure a little bit later on in this presentation, but just being sure that there's some time for them to wind down and be off of the screen. We've all heard the impacts that blue light can have on sleep patterns, and it can be pretty disruptive. Try to limit and make sure their video games are being shut down and they're not reading with a flashlight under the blankets. And then just be a role model with your own habits, practicing some exercises for breathing, making sure that you make enough time for fitness, and encouraging your child just in general. And I like this, with notes in their lunchbox. I think that goes for big kids as well as little kids. Who doesn't like a good note in their lunchbox? And remind them that they are helping to protect others too, that everybody's doing our part, regardless of how you feel about what the protocol is, we are all doing our part to make sure everyone stays safe. And I like this final point here: read the SMART Restart with your child. That is really important, being honest with kids and giving them the same knowledge that they're going to need to go ahead into school when it's time and when it's right for your family. So we've talked about anxiety in broad strokes. And so what I'd like to do on this slide is talk to you about a little bit more specifically how anxiety develops and how it works. So you'll notice a triangle over here, and it's called the cognitive triangle, and it shows how our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors are all sort of interrelated. And you'll notice the arrows going kind of back and forth among all of those. That's because they're all connected. And let's take, for example, the experience of like public speaking, okay, and to see how this works. So most people are a little nervous about speaking in public. So when they're presented with this opportunity to speak in public, they might have certain thoughts about it. Their thoughts might be, what if I mess up? What if I forget where I'm supposed to stand? What if I freeze? What if I, go into a sneezing fit? They're having these thoughts, which causes them to have the emotion that we call nervous or anxious about it, maybe a little scared. And then that in turn affects their behavior. Maybe you start to pace or fidget with something. So your thoughts have caused you to have a feeling, your thoughts have caused you to have a behavior, and it just sort of works all in a circle or a triangle. So that's pretty normal. Being afraid to speak in public a little bit is pretty normal. But as Ms. Pius said, when those thoughts become bigger or disproportionate or not of a normal, regular, manageable level, that's when anxiety begins to develop and grow. And one of those, the major component here that tends to cause anxiety, is a thought that sort of begins as a regular fear and then just sort of gets bigger and bigger and bigger to where it's distorted and it's not really a rational fear anymore. And so the good news about understanding this is that once you understand how all of this works, you have the power to disrupt it and to stop that cycle of anxiety by changing just one aspect of the triangle, usually your thought or your behavior. So the important thing to note here is that once you understand this and you have some coping strategies and some coping skills, which we'll get to, then you can disrupt this triangle and this process. I also want to point out over here on the other side here on the right side, left side, sorry, anxiety grows when you avoid what is causing the anxiety. So if you're, worried about, speaking in public and you never speak in public because you're too afraid, then all you're doing with that fear is feeding into it and making it bigger and making it bigger. So when you don't engage at some level with the thing that is causing the fear, you validate it and tell your brain, oh, there is something to be afraid of. I'm going to keep avoiding it. And then it just gets bigger and bigger. So that's why it's important for us to learn these coping strategies and be able to manage and disrupt that cycle when we notice that something is disproportionate. And I believe that Janie is going to take us into those coping strategies.
Thank you, Norma. So while there are many strategies that will help yourself and your child cope with anxiety, today we're going to discuss 4 ways to minimize and work through those anxious feelings. The first is focus on what you can control, limit media exposure, decatastrophize, and engage in calming activities. Next slide, please. So can and can't control. We know that there are things that we can and we can't control. For example, even though we would like to, we would want to control the weather. I know if I controlled the weather, I would make July feel a lot like November, because summer in Texas is not a fun experience. So since we can't control certain situations, such as the pandemic or the weather, we can manage our big feelings and how we react to the situation. We can't expect our kids to know how to manage their big feelings, and so it's something that we have to actively teach them. So we need to teach them how to focus on what they can control. Next slide. So when a situation arises that a child or an adult starts feeling anxious, a good way to help them process it is a can control diagram or a T-chart, and list out things that you can control and things you can't control. So this diagram right here explores COVID-19. So there's some things that we can do to help kind of manage on our end. So if we're not feeling well, we can stay at home. We can practice self-care. We can ask for help if we're feeling really anxious, especially with these kiddos who haven't returned to school yet because they're just not ready yet. And to have those discussions with them when they reach out for help. If they're coming to you and wanting to talk about their big feelings, it's important that we help them process it. And it's also one of the things that, they definitely can control, and we can start from very, very little. I know with my 3.5-year-old, we focus on washing hands and practicing good hygiene, even more so than we did before the pandemic. So giving them those tidbits of things that they can control and teaching them how to do that can really help them when they start to feel anxious and when they start feeling like they are going out of control. The things that we can't control, and these are conversations, that you can have with your child as well. We can't control what people do to take care of themselves. We can only do what we can do. We can't control how other people respond. So it's really important to work through this, and this can be used for more than just, talking to them about COVID-19. There's other situations that will arise as they continue to grow and have certain life experiences that you'll be able to help walk them through with this technique. Next slide, please. So limiting media exposure. So secondary trauma is having a feeling of trauma even though you haven't really been impacted by the event. So let's think of it like this. An example would be you drive, on the road and you see a car accident. You didn't experience the accident, you weren't involved. But as you continue to drive, you probably start feeling a little bit anxious and worried and thinking, oh my goodness, that could possibly happen to me. And just kind of those feelings of stress, come upon you. It's okay to feel those things, okay? But what we want to be mindful of is the amount of screen time that we're all spending, especially with, kind of being locked in our homes for a little bit and having our kids at home a lot to do online school. So be mindful of the news that's on, the conversations that your kids may hear on the TV. While we use our technology to help, progress us with our education, our interests, learn things, kind of give ourselves a little bit of a brain break, we kind of need to start encouraging, kiddos, let's do something fun, especially if they are reading or hearing something that may be a little anxiety provoking in them. So are they spending a lot of time on TikTok? Are they spending a lot of time on, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever it is that they're socializing with? Are they playing Fortnite till all hours of the night? There's a really big difference in FaceTiming with grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends, family, than spending that extra time on social media or, watching TV. So there are no hard and fast time constraints for kiddos and for families, but you just kind of have to be mindful of the 3 C's, like who your child is, the context of what they are doing with social media or on their electronic devices, and then the content of what it is. So just be mindful of that. And then in our list of resources that we're going to be providing online, there's a really great article because we're having to parent and manage screen time in the time of coronavirus, which is, something different that we're all learning to do. So now Tracy will discuss 2 other coping strategies.
Thank you, Janie. So one of the other strategies that we talked about was the decatastrophizing. So catastrophic thinking is basically a cognitive distortion. So basically, we have certain fears about things and we're magnifying those. When this becomes a problem is when it keeps us from truly living our life and being productive. So decatastrophizing is a cognitive technique that we use to reduce and to help de-escalate the anxiety level in ourselves. So how do we do that? The first thing that we really need to do is we need to recognize that our feelings are real and they are valid. They may not necessarily be the truth, though. Sometimes our perception can be our reality, but it may not necessarily be the truth. So we want to identify the thoughts that are making you feel anxious. And then we want to challenge those thoughts. And, basically you're telling yourself and your feelings what is true and what is false. And so we want to take some time to think about what the truth is and practice some mindfulness techniques as well. And I'll talk about that here in just a minute. Next slide, please. There we go. So this is an example of a worksheet that talks about cognitive distortions and how catastrophizing affects a person. So it's basically when your thoughts and fears are exaggerated, and this leads to increased anxiety. So basically you identify the thought that is worrying you. So whether it be something that's going on with the pandemic right now, maybe your child is worried about returning to school and what that's going to look like. And so this would be a tool that you could use to chart out, what is the worry? Say they're worried about coming back to school and they're worried about getting sick. Okay, so what are some things that you can do to prevent getting sick? Make sure that we're practicing those. And if we are practicing those, then what is the, what's the percentage of things, what's the percentage of how we're going to feel once we get back to school? And how likely is it going to happen if we are taking the proper precautions? Okay, and then you kind of think about, if you were to get sick, what could happen? The schools are doing amazing jobs with keeping everything clean. So you want to talk through all of those steps with your child to help reduce those anxieties. Okay, if you can go to the next slide. Okay, so mindfulness is a wonderful technique to help with anxiety. And there's lots of apps that you can find to help work with anxiety and help to practice mindfulness. Okay, so mindfulness is a state of non-judgmental awareness of what's happening in the present moment. Anxiety has to do with the future. So we're worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. Mindfulness brings you back to the present, and it makes you aware of your own thoughts, feelings, and senses. So some of the things that you can do a mindful meditation, and there's apps that you can download that are free that can help you walk through those. There's a mindful walk where if you have time to, and it's nice outside, to get outside, get some fresh air. There's something called a body scan. That's where you pay close attention to the physical sensations throughout your body. You kind of start with your feet, and then you work your way up, and you think about how are you feeling in each areas of your body. And you can spend anywhere from 15 seconds to a minute on each body area. And this has a calming sensation when this is practiced. And again, you want to focus on your 5 senses. You can say 5 things that you see, 4 things that you feel, 3 things that you hear, 2 things or 1 thing that you may smell or taste. Okay. Some of the great, Mind Yeti is awesome for younger kids. It's, you can see by the cartoons, they kind of have little cartoons for different feelings. It's really good for elementary age kids. Headspace, Happify, those are all really good. And then in this top block here, in the order, these are some of the popular apps available. The first one is Stop, Breathe, and Think. The Calm app is really good. Headspace again. The Smiling Mind is a very good app to help with mindfulness. Then there's the Mindfulness app, and then there's Mind Body. Okay, we go to the next slide. So in closing, even though we all experience anxiety in different ways, there are common symptoms that you can find in terms of feelings, behaviors, thoughts, and cognitive experiences. The recommendation is for you to pay close attention to any changes in your child's behavior. For example, if they start isolating or they start avoiding things that they used to enjoy doing, if they are overreacting, or if they begin you know, acting out of character. Maybe they're not usually defiant and they start acting defiant. You want to look for emotional signs of anxiety, like distress, feeling overwhelmed, you know, or having an extreme fear. I know my daughter's reaction has been very different since all of the pandemic has begun. And it's, you know, we practice washing our hands a lot. And, you know, she looks down and sees something on her hand. She's like, am I going to be okay? And I'm like, yes, baby, you're going to be fine. Just go wash your hands. You know, you're going to be okay. So, you know, she comes to me. Not all kids go to their parents about everything. So again, just, you know, keep an eye on your kiddos, monitor their academic progress, and stay in close communication with your child's teachers. Your teachers can give you a good breakdown of what they're seeing in class, whether it's through a Zoom or whether they're at face-to-face in face-to-face class. So that's a good resource for you as well. Typically when students begin to struggle emotionally, socially and emotionally, you will see that impacted in their grades. And then by monitoring and identifying any changes your child may be experiencing, you're not only helping, but supporting his or her emotional well-being. So ultimately, you are teaching your child that it is okay to feel anxious, but we don't want it to debilitate, you know, your child from living a healthy and productive life. And so we want to be able to teach them learning and teach them coping skills and mindfulness, and be able to model that for them. Okay, next slide. And so if you think your child is experiencing significant anxiety and it is not manageable on your own, please reach out to your school counselor for more resources. And then I believe we are available for some questions and answers.
Tracy, you did have one question. It was, what answer would you give to a secondary student when they are sharing that they don't need to go face-to-face and interact with others? They want to stay in KVA, and explaining that they don't enjoy talking or interacting to people to learn.
I guess my first question would be, is that something that your child has always felt? I mean, has your child previously enjoyed being face-to-face? And now that they've been KVA, they're nervous about returning back face-to-face? Like, is it due to the pandemic, or is this something, you know, I guess for me, it's kind of hard to give a definitive answer on that without knowing, you know, are there changes that you've seen in your child? I know that we do have some students here who have stated that they want to stay KVA because they don't, maybe they've never really liked being in school, and avoiding something that you're uncomfortable with, again, is going to increase that anxiety. So, you know, I was talking with a student today who, it would not be in his best interest to be at home in isolation, especially when both parents are working. So those are some things that I spoke with that student today. I'm not sure if that helps, but you know, you could certainly reach out to your school counselor to talk with the school counselor, and maybe the school counselor can even talk with your child.
Thank you, Tracy. We don't have any other questions, but feel free to type them in the Q&A if anyone has any questions for these ladies to answer. Okay, so my child is in the 6th grade, face-to-face, and she's very concerned about her concentration in class, her ability to concentrate. Do you have any recommendations or suggestions for this parent?
6th grade. So face-to-face, she's concerned about her concentration in class face-to-face. So I'm assuming she's already returned face-to-face and is struggling with paying attention. I'm not sure if that's something that she's always struggled with or if that's something new now that she's returned face-to-face. Again, you know, I would reach out to your counselor, or even if it's a specific class that she's in. Once you get into junior high school, they go from having kind of like that block scheduling to having 7 periods a day. So, you know, is it returning after being gone for so long? You know, as the counselor, I would want to, you know, talk with that child or talk with you, you know, as her parent, to see what's going on and kind of dig in a little bit deeper to find out why that might be an issue.
This is kind of a question for everyone. What services do the school counselors offer, and how do kids seek these services? So if you guys want to talk about it at the different levels.
Okay. And I think there was another question that Alejandra said she wanted to answer about with subbing with 2nd and 3rd graders.
Yes, someone is asking, I have noticed in subbing with the 2nd and 3rd graders, more emotions from acting out to crying. Any advice? Okay, right now, after returning back to school, those that are face-to-face, it is very common to see more emotional responses. Because remember, the kids have been at home for a long time and with their parents or with the siblings and families. So being at school and following a routine, it's a little bit hard for the kids, especially the little ones right now. However, we can help them by giving them frequent breaks, let them have some space from time to time, you know, do some, okay, everybody stand up, let's do a 5-second movement, exercise, something. So break the day, break the class into small chunks so the kids can have some time to stretch, to walk, even if it is in the classroom. Some movement, because they need that. They have been at home, they have been, yes, probably they have been a lot of time spending a lot of time in the computer or in a tablet or in video games, but without a routine. Being able to stand up and go get a glass of water from the refrigerator when they feel like it. Being able to go to my room or go to my parents' room and stay with my mom for a little while and cozy with my mom for a little while and then go back to my video game. They're craving all that attention, all that individualized attention. So try to break each class into small pieces of free activities. Give them 5 seconds to exercise. Give them, okay, now get a piece of paper and scribble the first thing you come to your mind. And then later break it again and, okay, so-and-so, can you explain me your drawing or your scribble? What came to mind? You know, give them little pieces of time so they can break that routine until that routine is all built again. It has to be little by little. We cannot build a routine from one day to the next. So just give them a little bit of time and space and they will be getting into that again.
Can you ladies answer the question of what services school counselors offer and how do kids seek those services?
I'll answer that one. So school counseling offices, we offer a lot of different services: academic planning, social emotional learning. We are the contact point if there is a child in crisis on campus. And if a child wants to see a counselor, they are more than welcome to go to any school counseling office and ask to see the counselor and see if the counselor is available. I know at many of the secondary levels, students can request a counselor visit or to see the counselor through an appointment with QR codes, or fill out a form and it gets delivered to the counselor's office, and the counselor will call them in times of a crisis. If a student comes in and they're having a panic attack or very anxious or upset, we do see them right away. We consider that an emergent situation, a crisis response, because we want to make sure that we are able to help them process what's going on and reach out to the parents if need be, and move forward with that.
At elementary level can be a little bit different depending on the elementary. Some of the counselors are part of their rotations right now, so they may not be available. Some others are not, but they can always ask the teacher, and the teacher can check with the counselor to see if we are available. And if your counselor is available, they can send the child to the counselor's office, or the counselor can go to the classroom and pick up the child. It all depends on each elementary how we're working right now, because we are all kind of a little bit different. But we try to be available for our students, and we try to get to see them as soon as we know that they need to speak with one of us.
Parents are welcome to reach out to counselors as well, and just let us know and send us an email. Hey, my child is in so-and-so's class. My child is a KVA student, and this is what I'm noticing. How can we set it up? It is a little bit different with the elementary kiddos, because the easiest way, I think, is like Alejandra said, just parents or teachers. And I know in the secondary levels, they have a little more independence in that.
And I saw a question at the bottom about a kiddo in KVA. A secondary kid in KVA, counselors are available by email. We set up appointments the same way. I have Zoomed with students who needed help with academic counseling, with social emotional stuff. So it's really easy to reach us. All of our email links are on the school webpage. All the counselors are listed, depending on what child or what school your child goes to.
I see a question here that I would like to answer. What are your recommendations for new elementary students to the school who started KVA and are returning face-to-face? How do they build new friendships and feel comfortable around peers while social distancing is still important? And that is a really great question. One thing that can be a comfort to our students is that we have had so many students who have been in KVA up to this point in the school year, and so many of them will be returning when the second grading period starts. And so it's not going to be like they are coming in and they are the only new child in the class. And I think that it is going to take, and I know that our teachers and all of our school personnel are working very closely with the students at reintegrating. Even for our students who went back face-to-face on August 19th, those students had a very long gap in their face-to-face instruction. And so it has been a continual effort to bring those kids in and to reach those students and to build the relationships between the teacher and student, and to also foster the student-to-student relationships on campuses so that they are able to reintegrate. We understand that academics are extremely important always. Of course, we're in the business of school. But equally important to academics is the social development of our children. And so our schools are very much focused on that and helping the students to integrate. And social distancing, I know that our campuses are all very mindful of the social distancing requirements. And I will ask our elementary ladies if they would like to pipe in with any elementary specific social distancing tips, tricks that make the students feel more comfortable at your campus, at that particular campus level?
I can answer that one. One of the things that I love about being in elementary is there's a sticker for everything. And the district has provided us with stickers for things like standing in the cafeteria line. So the child knows exactly where to stand on the sticker. They have a sticker at the cafeteria tables so that they know where to sit, and they're distanced apart. I think there's no more than 3 or 4 per table. I don't have lunch duty, so I can't swear to it. We teach them kind of fun ways to make sure that they're not too close to each other in line. I know one of the teachers at my campus told her 4th graders, you ought to be able to walk like a zombie walks without touching anything, with your arms out. And I thought that was pretty clever. In the library, the libraries aren't open. Well, the library on my campus isn't open. I don't know if that's everywhere, but those common areas, we can now use the computer lab again. We've spaced those out to where we have one computer and then a space. They're turned all different ways. There's plexiglass everywhere. Teachers at small group tables have big plexiglass shields, and they're divided out for the kids, as well. So everybody's in their own little plexiglass partition. The desks are spread out. I'm going to tell off on my age a little bit here, but I went to school when desks were in rows. And so that's what it looks like again, is that all of the students' desks are in rows and it's separate. And, they still engage in activities like turn and talk, but it's just not, the 4 anymore. It's turn and talk to your neighbor who is way over there. So it does look a little different, but the kids overall I feel like the kids who are in our building at least are happy to be back, and the spacing and the distancing hasn't really disrupted anything, but it does, I know it makes the kids feel better. There are some kids who are nervous about it, and so they do appreciate the space and the hand sanitizer everywhere. So I think that pretty well covers it.
Okay, I'm looking. There is a Spanish language question that we have, and I'm going to ask Ms. Paez if you would please address that, since you are our wonderful Spanish speaker in our group.
Ok, Miss Liendo, entiendo que no puede intervenir por el problema del idioma. No se preocupe, esta presentación va a estar, nosotros vamos a mandar toda esta información, va a estar publicada en el Parent Legacy Academy en la página web, y allí la va a poder encontrar también en español. Si tiene preguntas acerca de lo que esté pasando y de todo lo que se ha presentado hoy, puede hablar con la consejera o el consejero de su escuela, y ellos van a tratar de darle las respuestas que necesite. Si el consejero o la consejera de la escuela no habla español, dígale por favor que se comunique con alguno de nosotros que hable español, y con muchísimo gusto cualquiera de nosotras le podemos ayudar en lo que usted necesite.
Thank you very much. And I see a question as well about a concern for a student making friends who is new to KDISD, and how do you make friends during this time? And that is a very, very good question. With the social distancing and with so much of our interaction amongst each other, I don't know if your child is, if this particular child is a KVA student or a face-to-face student. It is very challenging because, I recognize the challenge of trying to make friends in any type of a traditional way, because we are so limited in our in-person interaction and what we can really do. And so I think that there are lots of different considerations there, including what campus level your child is, even particularly within the elementary campus level. Are they younger elementary or older elementary, as far as just making friends and as far as getting along with other children. So that is, I absolutely understand the concern, and I wish that there were a magical answer to that question. I do want to acknowledge that, but just encouraging your child to be kind and to give people the grace that he or she would like to receive. Being kind, being considerate of other people's feelings, because even if we are, sometimes it feels easier to interact away. You might interact away on social media or perhaps even in Zoom, that you would not do if you were sitting across the table from that person. And so trying to model that kindness and trying to be considerate of each other, that's always going to be an important consideration. And if any of our counselors would like to add to that, that would be wonderful.
I can speak to the elementary level, and I can imagine it would be much more challenging in a secondary classroom. But I know teachers have worked really hard to be able to make sure that kids who are new feel connected and feel integrated. And I know with our new initiative with Character Strong, that was a really important component that elementary teachers focused in on, was how to help these kids come in and feel connected. And so the teachers are aware of this also. So you can reach out to your child's teacher about it. If they're in elementary, if they're in secondary, find a teacher that child really seems to really like, and maybe that teacher can offer some suggestions as well. Maybe somebody they have a connection with in that class or something. But reaching out to the teacher would be a good starting point too.
There is also a question here about the bus and concern about the security riding the bus. My recommendation with this is to go to the KDISD Smart Restart Smart, and there are videos in there, and some of the videos are about the buses, how the buses are daily being disinfected, and not only daily, but after every route is done, the school bus personnel is disinfecting the whole entire bus before they start a new route. So all the buses are being cleaned up, not only daily, but between one route and the next one. So the windows are being lower down, so the air can circulate, so there's ventilation in there, and all the students and the bus drivers are also wearing masks to try to protect every single person that goes in the bus. So I would recommend you to watch those videos. There is a video in Spanish and a video in English, and discuss that video with your child and see how the safety and the precautions are being taken care of by the district.
Okay, and I would like to take the opportunity to once again thank our wonderful panelists, Ms. Baisden, Ms. Pais, Ms. Wagner, and Ms. Bazargani for giving us this fantastic presentation and sharing your insight and knowledge with our community. Again, this information will be, this video will be available online on the Legacy Parent Academy webpage. And you are also going to be able to get Spanish subtitles on that. And Ms. Pais was very kind to translate the presentation itself, the PowerPoint, into Spanish. So it will be available to our Spanish-speaking community as well. You can also, should you speak another language, you can access translation of the subtitles in multiple different languages, and there are instructions for how to do that through YouTube. That and those instructions are right there on the Legacy Parent Academy page as well. Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and hope that you will tune into future Legacy Parent Academy sessions. Have a good night.